I wanted to talk briefly about the moral equivalency I see being spread by the MAGA side of both YouTube and Twitter. The equivalency itself is nothing new, but the actors involved in spreading this moral equivalency are new. I remember discussing this very point during the Iraq War back in the early 2000s when the Americans were being tortured and beheaded on video for Al Qaeda in Iraq. Back then, it was the left saying, but we're bombing their country, so it's the same thing. Today, the false equivalency is coming from the side of the conservative right. And what they're saying is, we don't like Putin, not one bit, but you have to admit that Ukraine is a corrupt government. Now stop right there. Let's pretend for a moment that Ukraine really is as corrupt as you think it is, despite the fact that the only studies you can source on this happened from years before Zelensky was even elected. Let's just pretend that Zelensky was not elected as he was as a response to the corruption and that the Ukrainians were trying to clean up their government by voting out the opposition that was corrupt. Let's suppose none of that has ever happened and none of it was ever even true, okay? Let's put that claim on the moral scale. We'll put it right over here. The Ukraine government, corrupt, bad, evil Ukraine government. Now, how in the hell can you possibly compare that to what Putin is doing? Oh, we're not saying the Russian government isn't corrupt. It's corrupt too. No, that's not even the point of the comparison, you morons. Putin invaded Chechnya in 1999. He staged bombings throughout Russia to do it, including in Moscow itself, in order to justify this attack on Chechnya. He's poisoned people with literal polonium tea. He invaded Georgia in 2008. He attacked Crimea in 2014. He invaded Ukraine again in 2022. During this invasion, he not only has indiscriminately fired missiles all over Ukraine, killing tens of thousands of civilians. In the last attack, he just admitted that he used high precision missiles for that. Missiles which were 100% targeted at civilian places, parks, kindergartens, universities. These have no military value, and Putin claims he targeted them with precision missiles. His troops are committing murders, rapes, tortures nonstop. I can't play you the video clips of these events, even though they're available on Twitter and Telegram, because they are so graphic this channel would get banned if I showed them. And honestly, I don't really want to show them anyway. I saw enough of that garbage clear back during the Iraq War when I was seeing the Al Qaeda stuff that was happening, being televised then. So you conservatives, you think you're so morally superior because you don't support a corrupt government, even though our government is corrupt, in case you hadn't noticed. How do you balance murder, torture, rape, the intentional targeting of civilians on one side of the scale against the we don't like how we don't know exactly how Zelensky spent all this cash on the other side? If that is your moral compass, that compass is directing you straight to hell, where you belong, and I'm not going with you. There will be much more moral good in this world if you support Ukraine, because Ukraine is much, much less evil than Russia is. And that's just a fact. Ukraine isn't the one going around murdering, raping, and rampaging through Russia. Ukraine hasn't set a single foot inside Russian territory. So if you just listen to Putin's speeches, you would also see that all of this stuff that Putin is saying, he hates the West just as much. He hates everything you stand for. And look, the Russians didn't even ask who was an ethnic Russian and who was a Ukrainian before they started executing civilians in Kupiansk. One of those cities that you don't even know exists because you don't really even follow this war. Do you really think if they're not even bothering to see who is Russian and who's Ukrainian, that they're going to stop and go, did you support Ukraine or Russia during this when they decide to bomb you? This is the real world. It's not your pretend universe. You cannot afford to be this naive.